Truth destroys error. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. Welcome, everybody, back to Lights On. I feel like it's been way too long. I've been traveling the country to protest. Last Friday, I was in Miami for the 4th of July protest, very knee-deep in helping 5051 DC plan Good Trouble Day, July 17th in Washington. So I have been working on that all week, and I'm so glad to be back with you today. It has been another horrific week in the illegal Trump administration. He started off the week basically we started off the week with hundreds of people dying in Texas because of this illegal administration's cuts to federal programs, cuts to our weather service. These are just the latest casualties of this administration, and he is now in Texas today, Donald Trump, attempting to not take credit for what he has caused. We could go back to all of the COVID deaths that he's caused. We could go back to the January 6th officers who took their lives. There are so many deaths that are attached to this administration, not to mention the ongoing, unthinkable fascism that is unfolding in this country, the deportations to slave prisons, the deportations that are being sanctioned by the Supreme Court to countries like Sudan, the setting up of concentration camps in this country like Alligator, Alcatraz, and others, the terrorism of our communities that is going on a daily basis on our streets. It is absolutely unthinkable that we wouldn't be normalizing the conversation about impeaching and removing this administration every single day. You know, if you are not new here, that Lights On is more than a show. It is a movement. That is the only reason I do this show. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel. We are part of the movement that has moved forward the impeachment conversation, that has normalized that conversation. It's been such an honor to be embraced by people like Al Green, who is so fearlessly standing out and taking the lead on what every single member of Congress, especially every Democrat, should be on the side of right now, instead of hedging or telling us we need to wait until the midterms or wait until they have the numbers to do the right thing and uphold their constitutional duty. I've titled this show Behind the Scenes of the Movement, because we have an extraordinary guest here today. His name is Chance Meing, and I've met him on several occasions at the protests that I have organized and been part of. He has been traveling the country, been in DC so many times to document our work, to document dissent, to document resistance. He has a new documentary that he's producing called Days of Dissent. I'm going to play it for you in a minute. It gave me the chills and brought tears to my eyes when I first watched it. So I'm going to play it for you in just a minute before we bring in Chance. I also on this show, in the spirit of the title of this show, Lights On, and what I have committed to from day one when I decided to speak out and not let silence define my life. Silence is not an option. That doesn't apply just when Donald Trump and his illegal junta is committing egregious acts in violation of our rights. It applies across the board. And I am going to take a few minutes at the end of this show to address someone who attached themselves to this movement, who used my grace and, yes, admittedly, naivete to get themselves close to this movement and owes money to that movement and is still out there now, or once again out there trying to raise money. And it is my duty. It is my duty to warn you. So I'm going to do that at the end of this program. It's an individual that is now going under the moniker Democracy Jesus, of all things. So because it is my duty to you, because you have trusted me so beautifully and been so gracious in your support of this movement, it is my absolute duty to do that. So I'm going to do that today at the end of the show. But before we do that, we're going to have this great interview with Chance, and I want to play this trailer that shows you some of the incredible work that he's been doing to document the dissent.
President Trump deployed 700 Marines to L.A. and another 2,000 National
The United States launching airstrikes on Iran.
The country was not built on a
This is one of the
dictatorship.
largest protests in American history.
My name is Chance Meing. I'm a writer and I'm a filmmaker, and I've been speaking out very loudly against the tyranny we're facing.
Trayvon Caesar, 4-year Corporal Marine Corps.
None of us are here because it's fun and we're sure as shit not here because George Soros is paying us. We're here because we're fighting for our country, and there ought to be 1,000 times as many of us. I invite you all to join our movement, to join us in the streets, to join us in the fight to save this nation. That out of many, we are one.
Do something. It doesn't matter what it is.
This is what we demand. It's what the Constitution demands, and we are not going to stand for anything less.
Anyone who supports Trump is on the wrong side of history, and history will judge.
Families are being torn apart. People are being disappeared. Horrors are happening by the day. Just because they're not happening to you does not mean they're not happening.
This is a people's-powered movement. Everyone is welcome here.
If everyone just has a little bit of courage, then no one needs to be a hero.
None of us are free until all of us are free.
Our Congress is standing outside the White House doing nothing. And unless we fill the streets, we are standing outside doing nothing. And I will not do nothing. Because honestly, this movement right now, this is the key moment to take it to the next level.
Hard lines are being drawn, and the choice is simple. You're either not a fascist, or you are one. Thank you.
Okay, I think it did it to me all over again. That was so, so moving. I'll just take a minute here. Let me put this up top to announce before I bring in Chance the 2 upcoming events that we're going to see Chance in the streets again for. And actually, he's sending a documentarian down from New York because he's going to be speaking himself in Wilmington on the 17th. But on the 17th, as I mentioned, I'm very much part of organizing the July 17th Good Trouble Lives On event. Impeachment and removal is one of the key demands of this event, and we have partnered, 5051 has partnered with the Removal Coalition that I formed a few weeks ago, as well as 14th Now, Free Speech for People. So many more organizations, local and national, have joined since this poster was made. There's CASA, there's Freedom Futures Collective, there's Citizens Impeachment. So many extraordinary local and national organizations are partnering to make this event possible. And I'm so happy. I am so happy that we are elevating the demand of impeachment, conviction, and removal on that day. I have no doubt that if John Lewis were living today, that he would be at the forefront of that fight. And I've also been very excited to bring in friends of Lights On, the impeachment warriors, Al Green and John Bonifaz, to that event. So they will be speakers on that day as well. Also, in addition to what we are doing at 5:30 p.m. at Franklin Park, it's going to be a rally, about an hour and a half of speeches, and then a march through the city, which is the first real march in Washington, D.C. of this illegal administration. Actually, not the first. Let me take that back, but a major one. Before that, on the same day, Cliff Cash and I joined with the folks at Flare, which is the encampment for impeachment and removal at Union Station. We're going to meet up there at 10 a.m. on July 17th and go to the offices of Congress, storm the Capitol the right way, the peaceful way, but the relentless way, to demand that these lawmakers remove Donald Trump from office. Yes, all of those faces you see on the screen, but also the Democrats who honestly have been so complicit in this moment, the ones who are not already on board for impeachment. So big day coming up on July 17th. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Chance Meing to the show. Chance, let me unmute you here. Welcome to Lights On.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So you and I met, apparently, I think we met first at 314 at the Veterans March.
Very quickly, though.
Very quickly. Yeah. I honestly was only reminded of it by the trailer.
Right.
But you and I had our first major talk at the Fox protests where Carlos joined us in DC.
Yes.
And you asked me a lot about my background, but I want to know about yours because I see you pop up everywhere. What brings you to this fight right now?
Necessity. I feel like I'm just compelled. I have a background in filmmaking and writing. That's always been my expertise, what I've been good at ever since I was in middle school. That's what I've pursued. And I knew that I not only wanted to get involved, but felt compelled, like I needed to get involved in any way that I could. And so I was like, why not use the skills that I have towards this movement?
Yeah.
So when right before inauguration, I spoke out very vehemently on social media during Trump's first administration, to where Trump blocked me on Twitter, probably in like 2019, because I was just very vocal and harassing. But
that's your First Amendment right, unless
you
you weren't promoting violence, were you?
Not at all.
Okay,
No.
that's your First Amendment right, and that's not harassment of our leaders. That's what they deserve in a democracy. So
exactly, but I guess he just couldn't take it, which I'm sure he did to so many other people. I know, it's not exclusive to me, but I kind of take it as a badge of honor. I'm not gonna lie. But once I saw that he was going to be president again, which I was baffled by, I remember staying up all night watching the election results and just, feeling obviously defeated, as so many of us probably felt, but flabbergasted. I could not understand how we found ourselves in this position again. So I was like, I got to start speaking out tenfold, way more than I was before. I saw the, trajectory. I, read much of Project 2025 leading up. So I knew that it was a dire moment collectively for all of us. So I just started making political content on YouTube, which is, nothing that I ever intended to do. It was nothing, that I ever pursued before or was very interested in doing. I'm a writer first and foremost, and I write fiction. And a lot of that, yes, is political. I think the majority of art is political. And so that was always ingrained in the work that I was doing. But I knew that the time was dire now, that I need to put all my focus on, this movement that we're seeing. And at first it was, very small. I remember starting the political content videos and everything and seeing the 5051 start organizing. And the first protest that we actually went out to was in Raleigh, North Carolina in the middle of February. I forget exactly what the date was. And that was
February. Was it the President's, not my President's Day, February 17th?
Yes, yeah. February 17th. So that was the first one that we actually organized. We got our boots on the ground and we started making those very important connections that we've, cultivated since then. But yeah, just felt compelled to do something to add my skills and my efforts to this movement in any way that I could. And me, along with my production partner and cameraman Trayvon Caesar, we've been on this journey since the beginning of January and have been working to play our part.
Yeah, you and Trayvon capture beautiful content. You do really good work. Honestly, if you have a duplicate of Trayvon that you could share with me, I would greatly appreciate that.
I don't know. He might be looking to jump ship. You never know.
But, I'm so much in the same boat with you. And I know there's so many Americans and so many people involved in the resistance space and the protest space right now that are right there. Like, we are doing this out of necessity. We
Right.
don't know how to do anything but this. And
Mhm.
we are, in contrast to some of the motivations that we're going to be discussing at the end of this show, like, most of us are literally doing this we're doing it for free. We're
Right.
doing it on our own dime. We're
I was about
traveling
to
the
say,
country. Yeah.
we're paying to do it.
No,
We're not being
nobody's paid.
paid, we're
The
paying. Yeah.
protesters are not paid. The organizers are not paid. I mean, this is
Mhm.
genuinely like a heart and soul mission, because
Right.
we see what's happening. And I mean, I'm sure you share this sentiment with me, Chance. You just cannot believe. You talked about the election. Now, I don't believe he won, and we've covered that extensively on the show, by the way.
Mhm.
But the notion that we're dealing with this criminal. I mean,
Right.
this guy who this week we were talking about the Epstein files again, because we literally have a pedophile sitting in the White House.
Yeah.
Literally a pedophile. Like, it is so unfucking believable that this
Mhm.
man is in our White House. And what is wrong with our lawmakers that they're not talking about getting him out every single day?
Exactly. I think a lot of it, comes from cowardice and complacency
Yeah.
and, wanting to perpetuate a broken system that has, reached such a boiling point, and the pot is now boiling over and everyone around is getting burned.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people who do not realize the totality or realize the weight of the situation that we're in are either benefiting from it or believe that they're going to benefit from it, or holding on to the hope that we can go back to the status quo, whatever that means. But I feel like the unsustainability of the status quo that we had before is the reason why we're in this place to begin with. And it's crazy. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who are Trump voters or Trump supporters who are now starting to draw their red line with the release of the Epstein files, or the not release
The
of
non-release,
the
right?
non-release of the Epstein files. And I'm confused as to why that red line is being drawn now, as if this is news, as if this hasn't been the same attitude that he's had towards this very subject for the past 10 years. I've been talking about, and I'm sure you have, and so many have been talking about Trump's connections with Epstein for about a decade now, and all of the evidence that's stacked against him within that. And I'm one of the people within the circles that I'm in and the people that I know who have supported Trump or do support Trump still, or even waning on it. I'm somebody who has spoken about that for 10 years to a lot of these same people who are now saying, well, that might be the red line if he's going to be protecting pedophiles, or if he's a pedophile himself and refuses to leave the Epstein files. I'm like, where have you
Where have
been?
you been?
Where
Yeah,
have you
where have
been
you
this
been?
whole time that I've been
Yeah.
talking about this, or that any of us have been talking about this, and his relationship with Epstein, being best friends with him for 10 years, lying and saying that he wasn't involved with him or that he didn't like him, and then having the evidence to show that that's not true, lying, saying he's never been on his plane, and then the FAA logs coming out showing that he was on there at least 7 times. And it's just, all of that has been there for so long. The refusal to release the Epstein files is nothing new.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
so it's the cognitive dissonance is absolutely insane. The mental gymnastics that people will use to, justify and to support somebody like this while ignoring everything else is still something, even though we've been dealing with this for so long, it's still something that baffles me to this day.
Yeah. Well, you and I had that first extensive conversation at Fox News in DC,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that is the cause. That is the disease that is
Very true.
causing so much of this. And I lived it. I can't imagine how I could be living today and still be brainwashed, still be so, blind that any propaganda could
Yeah.
shield me from the truth in this moment. but it worked on me for the 8 years preceding Donald Trump. It worked on me really well. It totally inverted the reality of our national situation and
Right.
made me think that the politicians who are really working for us were our enemies, were communists, were trying to burn this country down. And that's what they work so incessantly on deflection, on demonizing the other side, that it's like, I tell people this, like when I was a Trump supporter, one of the lines that I would say when people ask me about different politicians, I would say they're all bad. And so I know now that's a giveaway. If you hear that, it's very likely a Trump supporter, because I would say they're all bad. And it's kind of authoritarian 101 to so poison the well. You think that everybody is bad, and so you're just picking the least of the evils. But when you talk about those people, and this show especially, like I'm never messaging from a standpoint of hatred, even though it's intolerable. Their tolerance for what's going on, it's inexcusable. But I'm always messaging like we're your friends. Do you understand? We're trying to save you from the very hard awakening that is coming your way. Inevitably, this pain, this suffering is going to come down on you and your family and your lives. And we're trying to tell you before you have to actually find out the hard way for yourself.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's and I think to the point of Fox News and the propaganda being there and manufacturing consent for a lot of the atrocities that we're seeing. I think the reason why it's so bad right now is it's been exacerbated by social media, by the technology that we have that is constantly in our faces and constantly learning from our own behaviors and presenting us with those echo chambers that we can get stuck in. So that is something that it's a lot harder with strangers to reach across the aisle and give grace. I mean, I'm sure you have, but I've definitely had a lot of people online come at me sideways and death threats, and the whole nine. But when it comes to the people within your lives that are on the other side of the aisle that have been supporting or still support these things, those conversations are still key. And I've had those conversations where, I'm well informed and I'm able to articulate my points very well. Thankfully, that's just something that I've been gifted and honed for a lot of time being a writer. But having those conversations are very important. And I have been able to open people's eyes that I never thought that I would be able to, not only with those conversations, but leading by example in the efforts that I'm doing right now. Because, you can post on social media all you want, but a lot of people will only really believe you or start listening to you when they see you putting forth positive effort for change. So that's really what we're trying to do. Does it get hard to converse with people who are Trump supporters? Absolutely, especially the people who I think that it's impossible to reach, who are the ideological fascists, who, not people who are brainwashed or who tout lies because they've been presented to them as the truth, but people who tout lies knowing that they're lies, but use them as a means to an end.
Right.
And, amongst
the malice versus the ignorance, right?
Right. And amongst any, group of supporters for something, there's going to be levels to it.
Sure.
And so we have to reach the people that we can, that are, seeing things, but still holding those accountable for the harm that they caused. If people are out there actively advocating for these atrocities, this ethnic cleansing that we're seeing in this nation, those are people that need to be held accountable. But, for someone who has been ignorant or fallen into holes of propaganda or brainwashing or anything like that, we need to be able to reach them and pull them over to our side and show that there is community over here and that there is an opportunity to be right, but also be willing to do the work that needs to be done to work against, your own complicity in fostering in this fascism that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's not just people who are MAGA or Republicans. I think
No.
Democrats are complicit in this
Oh
as
my
well.
God.
I think that myself, by, living in this society and having a sense of complacency and, benefiting from a lot of the things that this system that we have that has been, dependent and hinges on the suffering of others for the excess and opulence of a few. Like, we are all complicit in that system, and that system doesn't change. And, those atrocities that are committed in our name don't change unless we all do something, unless we all, take accountability for our part in it and do something.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about doing something in the complicity of the Democrats. And one of the things that has been so infuriating to me is, yes, one part of this is grace to accept the people that are brainwashed or trying to convert the people that are on the other side, and being concerned with that at all. But there's a part of me that says we don't even have to be concerned with that. Like, we are the majority. We are the majority. First of all, we can talk about the election and why that was not legitimate and millions of votes were suppressed,
Right.
and Elon Musk had his hand all over that election. That's one conversation about just the election and the fact that there was absolutely no mandate for this man to be in power right now.
Right.
But even if you don't believe that, just look at the millions of people in the streets that you are documenting. That, when I go out and speak, I was speaking in Los Angeles on 6/14. I have never seen a crowd that big. I asked a crowd of 200,000 if they wanted Donald Trump removed from office, and there was a resounding applause from the crowd. I have never lived through that in my life. If you can't, I've made this comparison a few weeks ago, and I think it bears repeating. You look at the Tea Party. Okay, the Tea Party was like a few people gathering in parks every once in a while. And they literally hijacked the entire Republican Party. They were the precursor to MAGA and Donald Trump. And the Democrats today tell us, and I've heard this personally from senators speak to me one-on-one and tell me that there is not public support for impeachment and removal when you have 10 million people in the street against this administration.
Right.
Like, what the hell are you waiting for? What is wrong with you for not harnessing the power of the people that are demanding that you do your job and get this guy out of office? What is wrong with you?
I think that, that's very indicative of the complicity of the Democratic Party that is in Congress, and not only their complacency with wanting to go back to the status quo, but actively, benefiting when you see a lot of these congressional Democrats who are voting with the Republicans, when they're voting with MAGA instead of having solidarity. I was going to use some examples, and the first thing that came to my mind was John Fetterman, but I think that guy is an anomaly and a Trojan horse. But yeah, I think
there's so many. I mean, so many, even the ones
really
that you see out, like Booker. Booker does this
Yes.
performative stuff where he does a filibuster on the floor. God bless him for it. And he literally voted in favor of so many of these insane cabinet appointments that are doing fascist illegal things all day, every day.
And I think a lot of it can be traced back to, the money that they're getting from corporate lobbyists, from foreign lobbyists like AIPAC from Israel and everything. And you see all of them who are taking money from them continuously, funding the genocide that is happening, and sending weapons to Israel. So I think that, obviously there should be distrust in your elected officials always, and you should always hold them accountable. To your point earlier, to say that all politicians are bad, I don't believe that, but I do believe that all politicians,
I don't either anymore.
I do believe that all politicians can be.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold their feet to the fire and not worship any of them,
Right,
and
exactly.
pretend like some of them can do no wrong, which has never made any sense.
No.
I think we should stop wearing politicians' faces on our shirts and faces on flags that we fly and everything like that. I don't think that makes any sense. I think, they are representatives of the public, and we should treat them as civil servants. So yeah, it's insane, the failure of the Democratic Party that has led to this and that we're continuing to see. And I think that there is such a huge, because of this movement that we're seeing and because of the necessity that's been born out of that failure, we're seeing ideological shifts in a lot of people. We're seeing, the Overton window start to move. We're seeing Zoran Mamdani, who just won the Democratic primary in New York City, and then you have all of these established Democrats and Democrats in Congress and in the DNC and everything, who are just crapping all over him and
Jealous
jealous,
Ledge?
and and piggybacking on a lot of the same racist propaganda that the Republicans are using, which just is the most egregious showcase of how bad it actually is, and how, there needs to be that ideological shift, and we need to start looking towards new avenues. People like Zoran Mamdani, who are advocating for their constituents, for their people, and being somebody who represents putting people over profit instead of the opposite, which is what we've seen in this country for such a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look at someone like Mondami, he's one of many who have been given the false label of anti-Semite for speaking out against genocide. And, I know this is even like friends of ours that are in this protest, around the country movement with me, disagree with me on this. But I am sickened. And I even feel, even sometimes on this show, like when I haven't covered what is going on in Gaza for a certain amount of time, I'm like, my God, I need to talk about this again. Like this week, as usual, people who are starving to death are getting massacred by the Israeli army as they are trying to get themselves fed. There is a annihilation of the Gazan people on the American dime going on as we speak. It is literally like, as we're living through Nazi 2.0 fascism in the United States, we're actually funding a genocide in Gaza. And the real, I have looked throughout this movement. Mandami is a wonderful pro-Palestinian, Muslim, someone who comes from the Muslim perspective. I have always looked to the Jewish activists. I look to the Jewish activists in the streets, Jewish voices for peace, because they are so clear about what's going on, not representing the Jewish religion, not being in honor of the survivors of the Holocaust. You don't commit another Holocaust and then use that to create some kind of victimhood that, that it's just, I'm so sickened by this whole construct, Chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm sickened by that whole construct and the hold that it has, over our nation. And I've done a lot of research and writing and, spent a lot of time looking into the genocide that is happening and the reasons for it and, how it got here and everything. And we can really reduce it down to violent colonialism, imperialism, and white supremacy, really, and everything that is being done by the Israeli government and the military there is upholding those notions of supremacy, of ethno-religious supremacy. And you can see it in the history and in the rhetoric. And when we're talking about, uh, malice, when we're talking about people utilizing lies, not because they actually believe the lies, but because it's a means to an end, that's something that we see come out of the Israeli propaganda machine consistently. And that's the one thing where you can understand the psychology around the Zionism, when you have these people who are instituting this genocide and then lying, saying that there is no genocide, while also
Claiming victimhood.
claiming victimhood, but celebrating the genocidal acts outwardly at the same time. And the hypocrisy is blatant and it's abhorrent, and it
And
I didn't know.
sacrificing their own people at the
Yeah,
same time, because the
right,
Israeli hostages are the casualties of Benjamin Netanyahu's
right,
quest for power and avoiding
right.
accountability. Just
And
like
if
Donald Trump, these characters are so
exactly,
similar.
they use those
Yes.
moments to manufacture consent. If we look back
Yes.
at October 7th, which everybody goes back to say, hey, what about October 7th and the atrocity that happened then? And of course, it's an atrocity. I do not advocate for violence
Of
on
course.
any
Of
side to
course.
anybody. The thing that we should be doing is stopping the violence and stopping the harm that comes to any community. But when you look at what was happening right before October 7th, there was so many mass protests, and Israel was basically, at a point of contention that we're on, almost at the brink of civil war, trying to get Netanyahu out of power. And then when October 7th happened, they used the Hannibal directive to go in and to bomb their own soldiers. And then what happened after that was Netanyahu used it to consolidate power and to stay in power, and then to institute the violent ethnic cleansing and genocide that we're seeing right now. And then use that same propaganda to manufacture consent on the American end. And it's just been horrifying to witness, and horrifying to see so many people who actively justify those kinds of things happening, um, regardless of who it happens to. It's sickening. I didn't know. It's hard for me to talk about because the scale of injustice that's happening over there weighs on me, and I'm sure it weighs on a lot of people. And you feel defeated knowing that there is not much that you can do here but talk about it and try to educate other people about it and try to combat the voices that are advocating for it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one narrative that I've heard, and I was talking about things from our friends that I disagree with, and this is among them, is that, the Gaza activists are almost like responsible for getting us to where we are now, or like they were responsible for Harris losing the election. First of all, I don't believe she lost, but even if she legitimately lost, like the Biden administration was so complicit in this. And what were people supposed to be silent while Biden was enabling it, while Biden was saying we're working for a deal, while every single time Netanyahu derailed those deals and we kept funding their massacres? I mean, I am a strong believer, Chance. I read the Bible, and one of the things that helped me get out of MAGA was where it says a fountain cannot bring forth at the same place sweet water and bitter. It's either a clean stream or it's a polluted stream. It's either a poison tree or it's a healthy one.
Right.
And, I think in my heart of hearts, like, God bless, I was 100% on the Harris bandwagon, with the caveat that I knew this was wrong, but we had to, choose.
Right, because we knew Harris wouldn't dismantle the institutions of democracy.
Exactly.
Like that's
Exactly.
what I said the entire
Exactly.
time when people are like, "I'm going to vote for Trump because he's going to end the genocide in Palestine," and that's what a lot of people I saw, and I was like, "I don't know why you believe that when he's taking money from them too, and he's in lockstep with them as well. Like, that doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, and God help the Muslims that went on board for Trump in this election. God help them. But I was seeing Muslim activists who were saying, or Arabs who were saying, obviously our choices are not good here, but we have to support Harris. And that was the stance that I was with. That was the stance that I amplified. But to suggest that when there's any kind of injustice like this, that we should be silent under any administration is
it
not
doesn't make any sense.
right. No.
Yeah.
And I'm, it's unthinkable that we're in this position. And I want to just go back before I forget, because I'm going to forget about this. I keep thinking as we're talking about different subjects, but as a documentary filmmaker, when you're going out and interviewing people like me, like Cliff, like Carlos, like other organizers and individuals who are leading these movements, what is one of your takeaways on kind of both like what it takes to mount a resistance, what is like motivating us, what the environment is like? What are some of your takeaways as a filmmaker?
Well, I'll first say that it's been an honor to be a part of this and to see the overwhelming effort that I see being done by, figures like you, like Cliff, like Carlos. I kind of, in our own little neck of the woods, I've really been mostly bouncing between North Carolina and DC. And Cliff Cash, he's from Wilmington, North Carolina. One of the interviews that I did with him was in Wilmington, North Carolina, where he pretended to be our representative David Rouser with a big David Rouser fat head on when we had a town hall, because our representative hasn't held a town hall in 8 years. And he does, so much work and puts together so much stuff. My takeaway is just seeing the passion and the amount of effort that people will put forward when they believe in something, and then seeing the snowball effect happen. Because I remember, all the way back February 17th, when we went to our first protest during this movement, and seeing in that area, we went to Raleigh, seeing just how small that it started with a couple hundred people. And then we were in Raleigh in June for another protest, and seeing how it just grew to a couple thousand. And not only that, but going to DC so many times and seeing how each time we go out there for these National Day of protests, more and more people are coming out, and we get the numbers from each National Day of protest, and each time it's more and more people. It's showing that movements, when you keep your foot on the gas and when you have something that you believe in, it will grow, and it will continue to grow based on the efforts of the passionate people who are, putting forth so much work and sacrificing so much time and energy to go all in on this thing, which has been incredible to see. And thank you for all the work that you've been doing, and the people that surround you have been doing in helping push this movement forward, because what we're seeing is unprecedented and historical in this country. And it's been a beautiful thing to witness. And I hope that in our efforts, we're able to capture some semblance of what this has been like, and be able to tell the stories of people who are being able to put forth their efforts and sacrifice so much time in ways that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So it's been an incredible opportunity, and it's been amazing to be a part of those things and to meet so many people. I am more of an introvert, so doing this has been me coming a lot out of my shell. I definitely feel like I'm a very personable person, but it's more like one-on-one. And so being at these protests, I've really had to, like, every time I go to introduce myself to someone, there's like a little pep talk in the back of my head to back myself up. I really have to, push my limits, and I've had to push my limits each time. And speaking too, I never thought that I would speak at protests, but it's not something, because it's not something that I thought that I would do. It's something that I'm compelled to do in the moment, because the moment calls for it, and we all have to meet that moment.
And I think in that sense, like I feel this way, and it looks like you feel this way from what I can see of your speaking, is that it comes very natural because it's just from the heart. Like we're just speaking from the heart on these things, and there's no pretense there. It's just exactly the way we feel and what we need to say.
I could not do it if it was something I didn't believe.
Yeah.
I could not do it because that's just not in my DNA. But because
Yeah.
I do feel so passionately about it, I go up on that podium, jitters and all, and,
Yeah.
do that. Or I go and I introduce myself to people just because I feel like these are stories that need to tell. And I started this really just appeal to people that I know in the community that I'm in, that I know were actively supporting what's going on, and be able to be like, hey, this is the truth, and these are how many people are speaking out against it. And that's been great to see. But it's also just been amazing, the support that we've been getting and how much we've been able to build ourselves and our efforts.
Yes.
And I've been really thankful for the opportunity, and the opportunity to come on here and talk to you as well. Thank you.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I think you and I have so much in common as to like not planning to have ourselves in this position in this time. We're just
Yeah.
literally taking cues off of
Right.
what needs to be done. And I think both of us are an example for anybody watching. And so many people, I think that you and I have met at protests. Like I've met people who have come to my protest. The next thing you know, they're setting up their own
Yep.
protest. And that's like, as much as I love to see thousands of people in DC or somewhere, I love to see like 5 people on a street corner in a red city. Like that is amazing.
Of course.
So
That's really what, we wanted to help cultivate. And the last time, well, I was in DC for July 4th, but was there June 14th for, the president's fascist B-Day parade.
Yeah.
But there were protests happening all over. And I remember being in DC at the march and getting all these videos and pictures from the protest that was happening in Wilmington, North Carolina, in my home city, and having super FOMO that I wasn't there because the crowd was so huge and a lot of my friends were there sending pictures, and never in my lifetime would I have thought that Wilmington, North Carolina would show out that loud and that large for something like this. And that's just been amazing. And I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to speak there on July 17th and to, see everybody that has been organizing in Wilmington. We've done a few of the smaller protests in Wilmington, but none of the big ones thus far. So it'll be a great opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. If you are anywhere in the region, go see Chance in Wilmington, North Carolina on July 17th. What time is it?
It'll be at 6 p.m. At Dramtree Park in Wilmington, North Carolina.
6 p.m. Okay.
And then we'll have, since we won't be able to go to DC, which I also have FOMO about not being able to go up to DC that day, but we do have, we've had so many people reach out to us as we've been gaining attention in our efforts. And I had a filmmaker, her name is Astrid from New York City, reach out to us wanting to get involved. This happened over the span of like a weekend, this past week and a half and everything. And she asked if there were any protests that we couldn't get to that, we might need somebody or a team to go to. And I was like, it was like the exact day that I got asked to speak in Wilmington. I was like, it's funny you say that.
Yeah.
So she goes by Recluse Astrid on Insta of Recluse Films, and she will be out in DC filming in our place and interviewing everyone and getting familiar with everybody, and was able to connect her with a lot of people who are going to be in DC on the 17th. So grateful for that. Everything's just been falling into place.
So grateful. Thank you so much for connecting us with Astrid, and really looking forward to seeing her. New faces, familiar faces. I know Sergeant Rhodes is going to be joining us. Cliff, of course, is coming.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the usual suspects will be there on the 17th. So really grateful for that. And by the way, this stuff is, this doesn't happen without expenses. It doesn't happen without a budget. You can't continue to do this without some help. So I did mention it earlier, but tell me, I want to put the actual, I know it's in the description here, but is it GoFundMe.com/
The Days of Dissent?
Days of Dissent. Okay. So let me just tell us about what your needs are there.
So, well, we've been doing everything out of pocket thus far for the past 5 months. And it has been hard to keep up with, and we've had to sacrifice some opportunities. Like we really wanted to go out to LA when you guys went out to LA. So the majority of the funds that we really need right now is for travel and lodging, so that we can chase the stories where, the front lines are during these moments and during the biggest protests that happen around. We want to be able to go to these different places across the country when necessary, and honestly to be on the go all the time, because a lot of the times we'll go to a protest and then we'll spend the rest of the week editing and going through footage, and it would be nice to be able to do that on the road going towards the next thing. We want to be able to compound our efforts more than we have thus far. So a lot of that will be going to travel and lodging. When you posted about our trailer, when we dropped the teaser, we had a lot of people come out, and we've raised $600 thus far. And since then was able to buy a much needed 5 terabyte hard drive, because my hard drive, all the footage that we've been doing and all the edits that we've been doing, my hard drive was completely full. And it was about 2 days ago. And I was like, oh man, I'm in the middle of editing this video and I can't anymore because I have no more space on my hard drive or on the limited space on my computer. So being able to use those funds that we just got in to be able to get a new hard drive and immediately go back into editing, that's another thing that we're going to need going forward is equipment. We've been using a DJI camera and DJI mics, some old lighting equipment, and we've been using cell phones to film as well. We would like to be able to get new cameras, new mics, and if we're able to raise the funds to get a new Mac desktop to be able to edit on, so that my computer is not overheating and dying every time that I edit. And those things will probably be a little bit later on that we will, because right now I've had a lot of people come out to us and tell us and ask us, when is the documentary coming out? And I'm like, this is an ongoing movement.
It's in progress. Yeah.
It's in progress. And unless there is a natural stopping point for us anytime soon that can lead us into, starting another documentary or anything like that, it's ongoing. And we don't exactly know where we're going to stop. We just know that we will continue to go to protests and film. We will continue to edit and update with regular YouTube videos on the Real Chance Meeting YouTube. And we'll also be updating the GoFundMe page with all of those YouTubes and including social media as well. So we'll still have regular content come out from the things that we're filming. But honestly, we don't know exactly when the documentary is going to be done. So
in progress. Maybe it'll be series, and maybe you need a series of documentaries.
Yes, maybe a series of feature length documentaries covering these things. But right now we're just still feeling it out, and we're bringing new people on board, and we're expanding and compounding our efforts, and those funds will be amazing in being able to do those things. So hopefully, I think with your help, you've been such an amazing help, we'll be able to raise that money and be able to put our entire efforts into this, which, I mean, we've pretty much been doing thus far straight out of pocket. And when we started this, we really dropped everything else that we were working on. I was working on finishing my next book to publish, and also working on a short film with my production partner, Caesar. But since
this
then,
took priority.
Everything's been kind of put on the back burner while we've been focusing on this. But honestly, wouldn't have it any other way with the moment that we find ourselves in right now.
I'm really grateful for your work. Happy to amplify you. I really wish, just as much as I wish that the national media would cover people like me and Cliff and have us on their programs once in a while to actually show the people that are doing the work on the street, I want people like you to be amplified just as much, because we're actually the ones out there doing this stuff. We are the ones making it happen. And so more than happy to bring you on and give you that platform. And I hope that you raise every penny that you need for that.
Jessica, I really appreciate it. You don't know how much, how grateful we are, not only for your help in amplifying us, but your part in this movement.
Thank you.
So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Chance. Thank you. And I will see you again shortly. Have a great time in Wilmington on the 17th. And I look forward to seeing your footage and meeting Astrid to come and meet us too.
Thank you so much. Have a great time in DC and stay safe out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so that conversation about funding and the real expenses is actually a perfect segue into the warning that I teased at the top and that I'm going to give to you now. I want to just give you guys a little bit of refresher on how I got to this space of protesting. If you're new to Lights On, if you haven't been here since the beginning, you all know that have been here that I left Midas Touch back in November because they would not cover the possibility that this election was not free and fair. They were allowing themselves, like so many in the establishment Democratic space, to be gaslit by the notion of stop the steal in 2020, so much to the extent that we couldn't even conduct election hygiene. We couldn't even have recounts and audits. And I, like many, many Americans, knew that something was wrong with this election and we needed to look into it. So I left Midas Touch and really, really focused on the questions that I had about the election and demanding recounts from the Harris campaign while that space existed still to do it legally. I then moved on to covering Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and educated myself with the best legal scholars in the country to understand why Donald Trump remains constitutionally disqualified from holding office because of his deadly assault on the Capitol 4 years ago in 2021. And I spent the whole month of December really trying to amplify the calls for citizens to contact their members of Congress and either bring up an amnesty bill to amplify the fact that Trump is disqualified or reject his electors on January 6th, as it was their constitutional duty to do, in spite of the ruling in Trump v. Anderson. We had really in-depth conversations about the constitutional and legal authority for why Donald Trump still, in spite of the SCOTUS ruling, cannot be president legally. And when that process was going forward and we were realizing that the members of Congress were not responding to us, somebody proposed to me, one of our loyal viewers of Lights On proposed to me that we really needed to have a protest in Washington, D.C., to actually put our feet on the ground to demonstrate and show up with our bodies and in the halls of Congress that they needed to stand up for the Constitution on January 6th and reject Donald Trump's presidency, as the Constitution, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment demands. Now, I had never organized a protest before. I had no idea what would go into planning one. And while I agreed that it was very much the next step and what needed to be done, I didn't think that I could do it alone. And to give you just a little bit of a sense of the time, this was literally the Christmas break over the holiday last year. Of course, right before January 6th was New Year's. It was not an ideal time. I myself was in transition, not even knowing if I felt like I had to leave the country for my safety, and generally feeling, I think, so concerned for my well-being as so many Americans were as we approach this unthinkable second Trump term. So in that kind of vulnerable and state and new to the protest space, having never done this before, I put a call out on Lights On for people to help me organize a protest. And I got amazing offers of help. And from those offers, I brought together a handful of people, maybe a dozen or more, to work on planning protest in DC. And I formed 14th Now, the organization that exists to this day that represents the citizens' objection to this illegal presidency in honor of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Now, one of the things that we were discussing with Chance, you can't do these things for free. There are expenses involved. And I didn't think that a protest would be too expensive. I really didn't. I even thought that we could probably find the funding privately. But one of the people that joined in our organizing group was very, very eager to start a fundraising effort. And I trusted this individual. And with the caveat that myself and another trusted person in our group would have oversight of finances, we allowed this person to collect the funds that I raised explicitly explicitly on this show on Lights On, that you were so very generous in giving us to make this protest happen at both in January and then the second time round in March, the Veterans March on DC on March 14th. Now, this is a major mea culpa, my friends. This is a major mea culpa because I could have avoided this all if I was just a little wiser, if I listened to the warnings of people who told me that this was probably not a good idea, but I also was working with a limited period of time where I wanted to make something happen and was trusting of people that represented that they had good intentions to help us. And what ended up happening at the end of all of this was that you all, as I mentioned, were so extremely generous in donating your money. You answered our calls for help. You gave, I can't even express the amount of gratitude and kind of awe that I have for how generous you were to make these protests happen. And by the way, we were so fortunate just in the overall picture of so many of these groups that are organizing protests, their budgets were nothing compared to how much we had because of your generosity and how much you answered our calls on Lights On. And so we were able to fund having real production staff, security, all of the things we really needed for those two protests in January and March, and had some money left over that we could very much use right now, that the groups that I'm helping to this day, 5051 DC, the other groups that I've helped organize, that could very, very much use that money for actual expenses. But the person who had asked me and relentlessly begged me to use my platform, Lights On, to raise money into his bank account, refused to turn over the funds that were left over from our fundraising efforts. And that person's name is Josh Johnson. He is not to be mistaken with the comedian Josh Johnson. He is a pastor, or he uses the title of pastor for a church that he has in West Hollywood, California. And he is currently going by the moniker Democracy Jesus, and has set up a podcast called Locked In, something like that, and I believe something called League of Coalitions, and is attempting to once again raise money. This is a person who is currently has a legal debt to 14th Now, who has both been contacted by lawyers and mediators to try to restore those funds to him, who has ghosted and gaslit the individuals trying to make him fulfill his legal and financial responsibility to 14th Now. He engaged in a very gaslit kind of MAGA Christian nationalist letter to me personally, almost humorous if it weren't so serious, where he accused me of multiple crimes and at the end told me to govern myself accordingly. This is Josh Johnson, aka Democracy Jesus, hosting a podcast called Locked In Live, running some sort of League of Coalitions attempt, and once again attempting to raise money when he currently has outstanding legal and moral obligations to 14th Now that are being pursued through all appropriate legal avenues. So it is my duty to warn you of this. I did not intend to do it other than through the lawsuit, which will be public, but as this individual has once again surfaced trying to raise money, and knowing that people who engage in this space and take advantage of movements for their own profit or self-promotion, probably if they do it once, they're going to do it again. I was extremely gracious with this individual and giving them both a platform and a lot of my time and energy. And I will not let your good faith and your contributions to this movement and this space be abused. That is what makes me so disgusted. The notion that your goodwill could be abused. And that is why I am exhausting every legal avenue to restore those funds that were taken from the 14th Now movement. So that is my duty to warn. Thank you for listening. Please be really, really careful about where you put your energy and your money. There are people who are actually doing the work that needs to be done to get this administration constitutionally removed from power. And there are others who see an opportunity and are opportunists and grifters who will attach themselves to a movement where people are outraged and desperately seeking solutions to enrich themselves. So please be really, really careful about where you put your money, your time, your energy. I saw one question in the chat a few minutes ago about the impeachment updates. And I want to let you know that I have some information that Sri Thanedar, if you remember Sri Thanedar, the one that brought the first articles before Al Green and did not follow through on his promise to invoke Rule 9. We will not forget that, but I do have intel that Sri Thanedar's office may be working on new articles of impeachment. If he does in fact do that, we of course will continue to hold Representative Thanedar to his commitment to invoke Rule 9. I've been so honored to be in continued contact with Representative Al Green, who, as I mentioned, will be a guest with us on July 17th in DC. And I fully expect Representative Al Green to continue this impeachment crusade that he is on, and to either bring more articles, which she has teased multiple times, and invoke Rule 9 again. And I want to tell you, if you go to a few weeks ago in the Lights On playlist of the show that I did with Representative Green when he forced Rule 9 and John Bonifaz, look at that list in that show of the 128 Democrats who voted to table his motion for impeachment. So many of those members, because of how we shed light on this show, because of the pressure from their constituents, from so many people who were outraged for them not backing impeachment, they have come to the other side. I pointed out one who was voted to table, and the next day was literally saying, I want to be a co-sponsor. Your calls to Congress, your pressure is working. Do not let it up. Continue to make those calls. Continue to show up. Join me and Cliff on July 17th before the protest at 10 a.m. at the Flair encampment at Union Station before we head into Congress. Join us in person. Join us on the phones. Call Congress at 202-224-3121. This movement is effective. You have incredible power, and they are feeling the heat. Don't doubt it for a second. I will stick up on the page the Removal Coalition, which if you don't remember, if you missed it, the announcement, this is the coalition that I put together a few weeks ago to amplify those who are committed to impeachment and removal of this administration. We need to normalize this conversation. It's all that our mainstream media should be talking about every single day. And we have the power with these millions of people in the street to hijack the conversation in the right way and start talking about how to get this fascist dictator who wants to destroy American democracy out of office. So go to removalcoalition.org. You can also follow us at Removal Coalition on Blue Sky and Instagram. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. You can go to thejessicadenson.com to get the merch for this show, thejessicadenson.com/donate to support my efforts to keep the lights on here. Thank you, as always, so much. Love you all so much. Appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and let your light shine.